Hello.
Hi, Beaches.
Sup?
How's it going?
I hope it's going okay.
Same.
This is a downer episode, so I hope it's going well for you. This way we can bring it down for you.
Well, how's your week been going?
Mine?
Yeah.
Busy.
Busy?
It's like I said the other day, I'm busier than a fly at a barbecue. With their little
busy.
hands. Their
That's
little
busy.
hands.
Yeah.
Can you hear my hands? You just imagine what I'm doing.
Right. Well,
this week we're bringing you some more disappearances cases. I've got a few good ones. You've got a lot of them.
I've got a lot, but one very
In-depth
one.
I've got 4 quite in-depth ones.
I got really into this one
Yeah.
and used up all the brain power I had.
Well, that's
So-
okay. That happens to the best of us.
So I guess we can go ahead and get started.
All right.
I'll hit you with my in-depth one first because I'm real excited about it. We're going to talk about Jimmy Hoffa. Nearly 50 years ago, James R. Hoffa went missing without a trace. This has been one of the most puzzling cases, making it fitting that the R in his name stands for Riddle. His name was James Riddle Hoffa.
Was this a Harry Potter character?
This was his mother's maiden name.
Oh.
So she made it his middle name. On July 30th of 1975, Hoffa, the former president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, was set to meet a couple of top mob figures at a restaurant in Detroit. Instead, it seems that Hoffa went there and met his maker. Hoffa was born in Indiana, February 14th of 1913. He was a coal miner's son. His father passed away when he was only 7 years old, and then his family moved to Detroit. I said Detroit the first time, Detroit this time. It's going to go back and forth. They moved to Detroit in 1924 with his family. At age 14, he left school to work full-time. He worked as a stock boy and a warehouseman for several years, and then he began his union organizing activities in the 1930s. He began as a business agent for the local 299 in Detroit, but by 1940, he became the chairman of the Central States Drivers Council. By 1942, he was the president of the Michigan Conference of Teamsters. 1952, he was elected as an international vice president, and 5 years later, he became the president. He was known in the trucking industry as a tough and knowledgeable bargainer. Hoffa played a key role in the creation. Where did I get condition from? In the creation of the first national freight hauling agreement. His efforts helped to make the Teamsters the largest labor union in the U.S. He was known to have long associated with some organized crime figures. He did loan out money from a $2.2 billion pension fund for the union workers to help finance criminal enterprises. Hoffa survived a series of governmental prosecutions until 1967, when he was locked up in the federal pen in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, for a 13-year sentence for jury tampering, fraud, and conspiracy. He still managed to keep his position as the president of the Teamsters until 1971, even from behind bars. U.S. President Richard M. Nixon commuted Hoffa's sentence in December of 71 under the agreement that he could not engage in any union activity until 1980. Of course, Hoffa fought this in court and was believed to still continue efforts to get back into a union position. It was believed that the mafia didn't want him in charge of the unions and, most importantly, the pension fund. Hoffa threatened to expose the ties that the mob had with these unions if they continued to try and keep him from regaining control. On that fateful July day, he disappeared from that restaurant, and the whole story has never been figured out. It was said that he was supposed to be meeting with Anthony or Tony Provenzano, a New Jersey Teamsters official, and a former mafia figure, Anthony or Tony Jack Giacolone. I'm probably butchering these Italian-ass names.
So it's like me with French.
And that guy was a Detroit mobster. Both of these men later denied having encountered Hoffa at all. He left his house around 1. He met with a friend before arriving at the, is it Machus, Machus, Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township. After waiting for about 15 minutes, he called his wife to let her know that he had been stood up, and then he just simply vanished. He was declared legally as presumed dead in 1982. There's several theories out there about what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
One is that he was killed by mobsters after the quote-unquote meeting, and his body was burned at the central sanitation facility in nearby Hamtramck? I don't know. This theory is what some say was the most widely known and possible. Another theory is that he was killed and his body was moved and buried in Jersey, possibly under section 107 of the Giants Stadium.
Yeah.
A third theory suggests that he was taken by the feds and dropped out of an airplane into one of the Great Lakes around Michigan.
Mm.
Theory number 4 says that an ally to the mafia, Frank Sheeran, killed him in Hoffa's own home in Detroit. This theory was the plot of the 2019 movie The Irishman, which was Sheeran's nickname. And finally, another theory states that, quote-unquote, the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski, a notorious New Jersey mob hitman, took him out and then drove his body from Michigan to New Jersey and dumped him into a 50-gallon drum and set it on fire. Now, I said finally, like it was the last theory that I was going to cover.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my spot. However, I did find one more. And I find this one to be quite possible and maybe one that I would hold as gospel for this situation.
Yeah.
Scott Bernstein, a Detroit crime investigator and also host of the Original Gangsters podcast, and the man that runs the maps, or runs the website gangsterreport.com, has covered the case for decades. He came up with a solid story that maps out the last little bit of Hoffa's life. He says that he is 99% certain on this one. According to this, Hoffa was kidnapped by Billy Giacolone, Tony Jack's brother, left the restaurant, went 2 miles north to take, to the Long Lake intersection and killed by up-and-coming mob soldier Anthony Tony Palazzolo at the location owned by a mob soldier, Carlo Licata, known as the House on the Hill. Hoffa had been known to attend meetings with mafia bosses there.
Mm.
So, I like that idea a lot better.
Yeah.
It sounds more reasonable. I don't know why I struggled so hard reading that.
Well, also, too, like, it's always been, like, a big thing to try and find, like, Jimmy Hoffa's vault.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Geraldo did, like, a whole special and made it, like, a whole big thing, and then it was just empty.
Right.
There's nothing in there. So, yeah, I don't know that that's ever been found.
I don't know.
Anyway,
my next one, I've got a couple, like, short ones. This one is the case of Lars Mitnick. This one's, it says that it's mysterious. It's as mysterious as it is unnerving. 28-year-old German man was in Bulgaria for, hanging out with his friends, vacationing. He got into a physical altercation with some strangers over football, and I'm assuming that means soccer, not American football. He suffered a ruptured eardrum, which prevented him from flying home. With, at this point, his friends left. They all left him there by himself. He began to act erratically. His behavior was captured by a hotel's CCTV.
Yeah.
He apparently called his mother and told her that 4 men were out to kill him. He was last seen on CCTV fleeing Varna Airport and running into a nearby field. He hasn't been seen or heard from since, and the reason for his sudden paranoia remains unknown. The next one I've got is Brandon Lawson. On the night of August 19th of 2013, Brandon Lawson got into an argument with his partner, Ladessa Lofton, and left home just before midnight. Soon after he left, he called his brother Kyle, saying that he was being chased out of town and had run out of gas. His brother worried because Brandon had been involved in drugs. He was worried that he was high and tripping.
Yeah.
But following after that, Brandon made a phone call to 911 saying that he was being chased into the woods. When the police and the brother Kyle arrived on scene, Brandon's truck was found, but it was abandoned. And Kyle's girlfriend, the brother's girlfriend, Audrey, received a call from Brandon who said that he was just up the road and bleeding. However, no one ever saw or heard from him again.
I feel like I've heard about that one before.
I had not heard of any of these other than Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you one of my deep dives, and I'm going to preface my stories with there are some controversial political topics, but I'm not going to elaborate. I'm just stating the facts of the case. I'm not going to elaborate. I'm not going to give my opinion on it. Whatever. So, I'm going to start with Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne and Barry Morphew grew up in the same small town of Alexandria, Indiana, where they met in high school. Suzanne was popular amongst her peers and was very well liked. Barry was a star baseball player who was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. The couple, who had begun dating after Barry graduated from high school, were married in 1994. Barry began a landscaping business, and Suzanne was a teacher before deciding to leave her job to raise their 2 daughters, Mallory and Macy. According to friends, the Morphews moved from Indiana to a home just outside of Salida, Colorado, in order to be closer to their oldest daughter, Mallory, who was attending college nearby. It was rumored that the move was an attempt to have a fresh start for the couple whose marriage seemed troubled. On May 6, 2020, Suzanne Morphew sent her husband, Barry Morphew, a text message that stated that she wanted to end their marriage. Her text read, "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." The text was found in the cache of Barry's phone, which indicated that the text message had been deleted. According to court documents, on the morning of May 9th, 2020, there were 59 communications exchanged between Suzanne and a man who was apparently her boyfriend. Early on the morning of May 10th, 2020, Barry left their home to drive to a job site 150 miles away in Broomfield, Colorado. The couple's daughters were away on a camping trip and were making their way home when they texted their mother wishing her a happy Mother's Day. Suzanne did not respond. This was when Mallory informed her father, Barry, that they were unable to reach their mom, and Barry reached out to neighbors and eventually talks to one and asks them to check on Suzanne and see if her mountain bike is at the house. When the neighbor found no sign of her or her bike, Barry asked them to call the police. Rather than heading home immediately, Barry drops off a shovel for his co-workers at a hotel where he had booked rooms for all of them, and he began driving back home a few minutes after 6 p.m. Suzanne was reported missing by her family, husband Barry and their 2 teenage daughters, and her bicycle was found at the bottom of a steep ravine off Chaffee County Road 225 from Highway 50. The deputies documented that the bicycle did not look as though it had been involved in a crash, and there was no blood recovered from the scene. In the course of the investigation, it was discovered that on May 10th, Barry was throwing away trash at multiple locations around Broomfield while he was in town for work. And there was surveillance footage from a hotel that shows Barry throwing out trash in a nearby dumpster. Barry told investigators that he often did this because he wanted to avoid paying to have it disposed of at a landfill, but investigators believe he was disposing of evidence. By May 14th, a reward of $200,000 was offered in the search for Suzanne. And 10 days after she was reported missing, investigators found a spy, and that's in quotations, pen in the walk-in closet in the Morphew's master bedroom. Investigators learned that Suzanne had gotten the pen, which was voice-activated, and recorded conversations in hopes of catching her husband in an affair. But instead, she inadvertently recorded conversations she was having with her secret lover.
Oh.
It took 6 months for investigators to identify the boyfriend, and it turned out he had a wife and 6 children in Michigan where he lived.
What?
He never came forward on his own after the disappearance of Suzanne and took steps to hide their affair. However, once agents were knocking at his door, he cooperated and provided his DNA, phone records, and passwords for deleted accounts, and investigators were able to verify his alibi, and he was cleared of any wrongdoing. On May 22nd, investigators with the FBI, CBI, and Chaffee County's Sheriff's Office were sifting through the dirt of one of Barry's job sites near Salida. By June 10th of 2020, there was still no sign of Suzanne, and nearly 24 members of law enforcement had conducted a community canvass throughout Chaffee County searching for her. Suzanne's brother, Andrew Mormon, organized a 5-day search on September 24th, 2020, of the mountainous area where she was last seen, and on the 25th, a candlelight vigil was planned for her at Riverside Park in Salida.
Why is there a Riverside Park or a riverfront or river everywhere?
I guess they got rivers, I guess.
I guess.
On October 7th, Barry spoke with CBS News Colorado and shared photos and love letters after Suzanne's disappearance. It was not clear from the source if he was just sharing these after the fact or if he received these after she disappeared, but I believe it was just something, he was just sharing them. Barry also shared the theory that he believes Suzanne had been abducted. On May 5th, 2021, Barry Morphew was arrested on charges of murder, tampering with physical evidence, and attempting to influence a public servant. The trial was set to begin in December 2021, but the assigned judge removed himself after defense attorneys raised questions about a conflict of interest. In February 2022, the murder trial was moved from Chaffee County to Fremont County, the reason being cited at the time was because of the size of the community and the pervasive negative pretrial publicity since Suzanne Morphew's disappearance. The court finds that a fair trial cannot take place in Chaffee County. This is a high-profile case in a relatively small county with a small jury pool. The media saturation is high. Barry's attorneys requested a dismissal on March 1st, 2022, after they received an internal affairs document surrounding the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's agent in charge, Joe Cahill. In a court filing, the prosecution claimed that the defense was taking bits and pieces out of context. In the internal affairs document, Cahill stated, "The arrest of the suspect now was the worst decision that could have been made." He continued, "The arrest of the suspect in this investigation was premature," and referred to it as hasty. On April 19th, 2022, a judge dismissed the case against Barry Morphew. The 11th Judicial District Attorney filed the motion to dismiss without prejudice, which means that charges could be filed against Barry at a later date if more evidence were to come to light. All throughout this, his and Suzanne's daughters were by his side in support of him, and they attended most of his court hearings. Later in July of 2022, Barry Morphew pled guilty to forgery for filling out and turning in Suzanne's 2020 ballot. He used her ballot to submit a fraudulent vote for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. He told investigators that he mailed in the ballot on behalf of his wife to help Trump win, and he thought that his wife would have voted for Trump anyway. Barry pled guilty to forgery of a government-issued document and was sentenced to 32 hours of community service, as well as a 1-year deferred sentence. He was also ordered by the judge to pay $1,000 in fines and court costs. Over this time, the case grew cold, and no one heard from or saw Suzanne Morphew until September 22, 2023. This was when the remains were found during the course of a search in the area of Moffett in Susquehanna County. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but we're rolling with it. On an investigation of a case not related to the Morphew case. On September 27th, the CBI announced that the remains found were positively identified as those of Suzanne Morphew. Her body was found in a remote field of sagebrush and grasses, and it appeared that the remains had been buried in a shallow grave before being scattered. And this was a quote from the Susquehanna County coroner, Tom Perrin. Barry Morphew reasserted his innocence in a statement issued through his attorney, saying, Barry is with his daughters, and they are all struggling with immense shock and grief after learning today that their mother and wife, whom they deeply love, was found deceased. They had faith that their wife and mom would walk back into their lives again. This news is heartbreaking. Neither the DA nor the authorities notified Mallory or Macy Morphew about the recovery of their mom. In a statement to the Associated Press from Barry's attorney, the Morphew family and legal team believe that CBI, local law enforcement, and the local DA's office have a conflict of interest and should not be involved in the future investigation of Suzanne's death. The couple's daughter said in an interview last year that they stood behind their father and did not believe that he had anything to do with her disappearance. And the only reason why I still included that was because when I wrote this episode, they had just found her body. So, otherwise, if she had been found, I probably would have left it out. But I already did all that work. And we still don't know what happened to her. So I left it in. I'm done with that first one.
Weren't you going to read? Or I was going to do?
You were going to do three more.
I got you. Alright, so the next one I have is Corey McKeague. September 23rd of 2016, RAF Regiment Gunner Corey McKeague went drinking with some friends in Suffolk, England. The next morning at 3:25 a.m., he was spotted, I'm assuming I shouldn't make assumptions. Corey was spotted on a CCTV entering a cul-de-sac of Brent Gubble Street, which is an area that contained several what they're calling wheelie bins. I'm assuming that means trash.
Oh, yeah.
But he never left that cul-de-sac. My voice just went weird for a second. McKeague failed to report for work the following Monday. Mm. That instigated the missing person. His phone was eventually tracked to a landfill, and searches were taken or done. Nothing conclusive was found. Mm. The prevailing theory is that McKeague was drunk, fell asleep inside of one of the bins, and was crushed by a garbage truck.
I mean, it's possible.
His remains have been accidentally incinerated at the landfill, but this theory is contested by many, including McKeag's mother.
Mm.
The next one I have is Claudia Lawrence. My screen is not wanting to move. There it goes. On the night of March 18th of 2009, Lawrence returned home from work and sent a text to a friend at 8:23 p.m. This would be the last time that anyone heard from her. CCTV footage was found showing a light-colored Ford Focus driving down the road the morning of March 19th and braking outside of Lawrence's house. Despite years of investigation, the case went cold until 2013, when the new major crime unit was unveiled. It went cold until 2013 when the new major crime unit was unveiled. They found that Lawrence's cell phone was mysteriously turned off the day after her disappearance, and unidentified fingerprints were found in her house. Several people have been arrested under suspicion of murder, but a lack of evidence and cooperation from witnesses have prevented any charges. The next one, Amber Tuccaro, Tuccaro. 20-year-old woman from... Why did my screen just do that? 20-year-old woman from Alberta's Mikisew Cree First Nation was last seen outside Edmonton on August 18th of 2010. She got a ride into Edmonton from an unknown male and has never been seen again. 2 years after her disappearance, a cell phone recording was released of her speaking with the man, and she can be heard adamantly questioning his directions and their true destination. Just 4 days after the recording was released, police found her skull in a farmer's field. The investigative work behind her disappearance has been highly criticized, and the Alberta RCMP even apologized to her family. And the apology was fiercely rejected. Which, being native...
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yep.
Alright. I'm going to move on to the Martin family. So, Ensign Kenneth, or Ken Martin, and Barbara Eileen Cable were married on November 28th, 1929, when Ken was 25 and Barbara was 19. By 1958, the couple had 4 children. Donald, 28, Barbara, or Barbie, was 14, Virginia was 13, and Susan was 11. The family resided in a 2-story Tudor-style home in Portland, Oregon, where they were well liked by their neighbors and they were active members of their community. The street that the family lived on was often referred to as Candy Lane during the Christmas season, as the family loved the holidays and enjoyed spreading Christmas cheer to their neighbors. Ken would play Santa Claus every year for the neighborhood children and would hand out homemade candy cane decorations. The family was very outgoing and was known to also organize summer talent contests, Kool-Aid stands, and even parades. The couple's eldest son, Donald, was away in the Navy and was stationed in New York in 1958. On December 7th, 1958, Ken Martin declined an invitation from their relatives, the Evans family, to come over for dinner that evening. He stated that they already had plans for the day and needed to stick to them. The family planned to head out to the Columbia River Gorge for a day trip in their 1954 cream and red Ford Squire station wagon, and while there they would gather greenery to make Christmas wreaths and other decorations. Details would emerge later that indicated a far more serious matter that may have been the motivation for this day trip. Each account varied as to when the Martin family left their home on the afternoon of December 7th. Ella Chin, a neighbor from down the street, remembered seeing them leave at approximately 2 p.m., while Frank Womack, who was washing his car across the street, claimed that it was closer to 1:30 p.m. Clara York, a waitress at the Paradise Snack Bar in Hood River, said that she waited on the family between 4 and 4:30, but later modified her story, stating that they had come in around 2 p.m. It is most likely that her original timeline was the most plausible because she remembered turning the floodlights on in the parking lot just after they left, when dusk fell. The family was also seen stopping for gas at the Cascade Locks service station, but reports differed as to when they were there and who waited on them. Kelsey and Doris Knutson claimed to have seen what appeared to be the family station wagon around dusk, parked under the Bridge of the Gods in Cascade Locks, with two men standing next to the vehicle, speaking to the passengers inside. After that sighting, the Martin family was never seen again, and what happened to them remains a mystery. When Ken didn't show up for work the next day at Essel's Electric Home Service Company, and all three girls were marked absent from school, their family and friends became concerned. It was ultimately Ken's boss who reported the family missing that evening, and a search quickly began. The Multnomah County and Hood River County police departments took charge of the investigation, and over the course of the following days and weeks, investigators gathered the aforementioned eyewitness reports and searched the area extensively, both on land and in the nearby Columbia River. Even though there was a lack of evidence as to where the family could have gone, many came to believe that the family had accidentally driven into the river. Amateur sleuth Donald D. Bain made the most important discovery of the investigation when he discovered tire tracks leading to a cliff in the Dales and cream-colored paint chips on the rocks below, which were consistent with the color of the Martin station wagon. Considering the location of the tracks, it was suggested that it was unlikely to have been an accident, as the spot was not close to the road. Efforts to search this portion of the river proved to be fruitless when officers Fred Pierce and Ard Pratt shot down the idea, stating that it was too dangerous and that no divers should be sent down there. However, Detective Walter Graven was told by Lou Smith, Kenneth Dye, and other divers that this would be a good place to dive, and anyone who knows how to dive would have no trouble in this area. On May 1st, 1959, a drilling rig's anchor got hooked on a heavy object near the Dales, but was unable to bring it to the surface once it was dislodged. On May 2nd, Ellery Colby and his wife witnessed two bodies floating down the river while fishing near Cascade Locks. In the following days, both bodies were recovered, and dental records confirmed that it was 13-year-old Virginia Martin and 11-year-old Susan Martin. The official cause of death for both girls was determined to be drowning. However, a technician reportedly saw what he believed to be a bullet wound in each of their heads, and he informed Dr. Waterman, the medical examiner. However, in his report, Dr. Waterman stated that no such injuries were found, and no police reports or newspaper articles from that time indicated any signs of foul play were present. The autopsy also revealed that both Virginia and Susan had eaten burgers and fries within 2 hours of their deaths, consistent with the testimony of the waitress, Clara York. There were traces of metal, including aluminum, found on Susan's clothing, and interestingly enough, an aluminum smelting plant was located directly across the street from where the drilling rig had encountered the heavy object in the river. Dr. Waterman claimed to have received several threatening phone calls after the bodies were discovered, and each time the voice of what sounded like a young man warned Waterman that he would be harmed should any of the other missing Martins be identified. Virginia and Susan were cremated, and for reasons unknown, their urns went unclaimed for a decade. The remains were finally claimed in 1969, however, there is no record of who claimed them. The only surviving member of the Martin family, Donald, was living in New York when his family went missing. And strangely, he never went to Oregon to help aid in the search for his parents and sisters, and claimed that his Aunt Charlotte had encouraged him to stay put in New York. However, Charlotte refuted this claim and stated that she did not understand why Donald hadn't gone to Oregon to help look for his family. Donald also hadn't attended the memorial service for either of his sisters, and claimed that he got the dates mixed up. As the sole surviving member of the Martin family, Donald was the beneficiary of the Martin estate, which included a $14,000 double indemnity life insurance policy, several other life insurance policies totaling $6,000, and a savings account with $13,000 in it. All in all, the estate was worth $36,000, which is roughly $382,000 today.
Good Lord.
Detective Graven initially suspected Donald of having some sort of involvement in the disappearance of his family, and his suspicions only grew after learning of Donald's troubled past. 4 weeks prior, he had been fired from his job at Meyer and Frank, a department store in Portland, for stealing over $2,000 worth of merchandise. According to the investigation report by Graven, Donald confessed to the thefts and explained to his boss that he was going through a difficult time. Relations between himself and his parents, Donald continued, had become strained after he told them that he was gay. Allegedly, he also referred to his mother as a fat slob and asserted that his father was not much better. Additionally, he expressed concerns that his sisters would grow up to be just like them. The report went on to say that Donald had also been accused of stealing in New York and that he was currently seeing a psychiatrist in the city. When Donald finally returned to Oregon in May, Donald told investigators that multiple important financial documents were inexplicably missing. They were missing from his father's desk. The investigation was further complicated by a sequence of red herrings and false leads. A white 1951 Chevrolet was found abandoned in Hood River shortly after the family went missing, and it was later found to have been stolen by ex-con Lester Kenneth Price, who had taken it from a friend in Venice, California, and driven it to Hood River. There was also a woman's glove found near the abandoned Chevy, but it was determined that it did not belong to Barbara Martin. The day after the disappearance of the Martin family, a black taxi was spotted parked outside of the family home at 7:20 a.m., and it remained there for 1 hour before leaving. There was a gas receipt that was supposedly signed by Ken Martin on December 7th, 1958, but was later examined and compared with several examples of his writing, and it was determined to be a forgery. This begged the question, was the family really even at the gas station that day they went missing? And if they were they there, just the 5 of them? A .38 automatic pistol covered in blood was discovered under a rock near Cascade Locks in January 1959, with a single spent bullet found in the chamber of the gun. Bizarrely enough, the gun was never processed as evidence and was later cleaned and returned to the man who found it. When investigators later traced the gun's serial number, they learned that it was among the items that Donald Martin was accused of stealing from Meyer and Frank back in 1954.
Oh, no.
Based on the personal journals of Detective Walter Graven, he strongly believed that the family was murdered. However, when he attempted to prove his theory, he faced resistance from the local police force. In addition to being denied the right to have divers search the river below where the tracks were found, Sheriff Francis Lambert allegedly burned Graven's report right in front of him in 1959, telling him, "We both know it's time to stop pursuing this case." Graven's investigation also turned up evidence that 2 ex-cons, Lester Kenneth Price and Roy Light, alias for Richard Allen Hunt, may have been involved in the disappearance of the Martin family. Hunt and Price were seen in the Paradise Snack Bar on December 7th at the same time that the Martins were there having lunch. The pair was also witnessed leaving around the same time the family did, and they both vanished from the Hood River area shortly thereafter and allegedly spent the next 3 days in Dalesport, Washington at a brothel owned by Clifford Slim Bennett, a well-known Portland bootlegger. Reports from the historical archives indicated that Oregon State Police and Multnomah County Sheriff Francis Lambert were connected to Bennett and had money tied up in his business ventures. even though Donald had already confessed back in 1954 of stealing over $2,000 worth of merchandise from his workplace, including the .38 automatic pistol. He later changed his story when speaking with Detective Graven. New York police told me about that gun being found. I have no knowledge of it. Wayne had a buddy who worked in sporting goods. Wayne liked guns. I didn't. Now the question was, who was Wayne, and how was he connected to the Martins? Wayne, whose last name has never been released to the public, showed up frequently in Graven's notes. He and Donald met in 1953 while Wayne was a student at Portland State University and Donald was still working at the department store. And the two quickly became friends and then roommates.
They were roommates.
Yeah. In 2008, Wayne gave an interview in which he initially claimed that Donald's parents had no idea that he was gay, and then immediately contradicted this assertion with the following story. Donald had set up a situation with another gay person at home after Ken and Barbara were gone, and the parents came back and caught Don in the act, so to speak. I think he wanted to open up the story of his life and didn't know how to do it. The identity of the man Donald was allegedly involved with has also never been released. After discovering Donald's sexual orientation, Ken and Barbara sent Donald east to attend a Christian college in Connecticut, but he decided to join the Navy instead. Wayne, who claimed to have known the whole Martin family intimately, remained close to the Martins and said that soon after the incident, Ken and Barbara came to him asking why he never told them that Donald was gay, to which Wayne responded that he didn't feel that it was his place to expose that information. Other details about Wayne are, his father was a well-respected figure in Portland, and while working as a physical education teacher at Cascade Locks High School in 1958, he also became acquainted with two young men whose names may sound familiar, Lester Kenneth Price and Richard Allen Hunt. Additionally, Wayne had become friends with a fellow football player while attending Portland State College, and this friend allegedly was connected to organized crime and went on to be a cab driver. Here are some theories as to what may have happened to the Martin family. Walter Graven's notes made vague suggestion to who the person that he believed was behind the disappearance of the Martin family. Though he initially suspected the eldest son, Donald, he came to believe that the Martin son had nothing to do with it. Writing in his journal, with Donald eliminated, girl's most likely motive had to be a friend of Donald's, whom Ken Martin had found out about and was going to expose. Therefore, had to be a married man or one going to be married. Wayne, who claimed to have known the Martin family intimately, was engaged at the time of the Martin family disappearance, and he went on to marry a nurse the following spring. There was no mention of this theory in his surviving journals, but Graven's family has stated that he believed that 14-year-old Barbie had been pregnant when she went missing, and seemingly supporting this theory was the fact that Barbie had seen a doctor in Vancouver, Washington, that fall instead of their family pediatrician. According to Clara York, Barbie had wanted to order a burger and fries that day at the Paradise Snack Bar, but was reprimanded by her mother, who suggested she order a tuna sandwich instead. We may never know if Barbie was pregnant or if Ken and Barbara knew about it or who the father might have been. Perhaps they had agreed to meet with someone and or wanted to confront this person. In 1969, Donald mailed Detective Graven a strange Christmas card that resembled a ransom note, which was comprised of letters of various shapes, sizes, and colors. And it was in French, and we all know, I'd butcher that, but translated to English it said, "And they came down from the hills, and they were no longer afraid." With this card was a sketch that was presumably drawn by Donald, as he was an artist, of a young man surrounded by 3 children, one of whom was holding a lamb, 2 sheep, and what appeared to be a cliff in the background. The drawing of one of the children bore a striking resemblance to a picture of Susan Martin holding a lamb. One interpretation of the meaning behind this card is that each of the pieces of the drawing represented his sisters, his parents, and himself. The cliff in the background, combined with the message, might refer to his family disappearing into the river, and he is implying that they are now at peace. This case haunted Walter Graven until his death in 1988. He firmly believed that it could be solved if only the station wagon and the other 3 Martins were located. But sadly, this has never happened. But what happened to Donald Martin? Donald went on to marry and have a family of his own, and he spent the rest of his life in Hawaii, where he passed away in 2004. According to his children, he spoke very little about his family or their disappearance. His children have also declined to speak publicly about the case. His youngest daughter, Sarah, said, "There are chapters of this family's history that we do not discuss." Richard Allen Hunt eventually made his way onto the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, being the 14th person to make this list since its creation in 1950, but for unrelated charges of robbery, assault, and check forgery. He was eventually arrested in Wyoming and waived his right to a trial before a grand jury, and he was sentenced to life in prison in 1959 after being convicted of an assault with the intent to kill charge. The sentence was eventually vacated when it was deemed to be too severe of a punishment for the crime he committed, and he was resentenced to 14 years but was released in 1968. It wasn't clear from records what the reasoning behind that earlier release was, or whatever became of him or Price in the years that followed. Over the years, interest in the Martin family would be renewed, most notably when journalist Anne Sullivan wrote an in-depth article called "What Really Happened to the Martins" about the investigation in 1967. Unfortunately, any efforts to solve this cold case have yielded no new developments, and the disappearance of the Martin family and the events leading up to it remain a total mystery. That was very long-winded, I'm sorry.
That was a lot, but it was a good one. Lord.
I need some water.
Some water.
Very dry.
I'm just here to tell you. So, being a mom of 3, I have somewhat mastered the art of multitasking. And I'm listening to you.
I'm gonna get me out of here.
A gnat? Yeah. It tried to get in my eyeball a minute ago. I'm listening to you, but I've also got the Alabama game playing over here. And this quarterback just got yeeted. Like, he ran in and they tackled him and he flew. And then they missed a field goal, and the look on the LSU coach's face was that of, like, a very disgruntled, disgusted parent. Like, really? It was great. Anyway, my next one is Kenny Veach. In 2014, hiker Kenny Veach left a comment on YouTube, or on a YouTube video, in which he explained coming across a creepy M-shaped, like the letter M as in Mary, shaped cave in the desert and fleeing in terror. Eager YouTuber commenters encouraged Veach to return and document his experiences. And while he did so, he failed to find the cave, but he did come across an abandoned mine shaft. I wonder if this is... Does this say... It doesn't say where it is, but I wonder if it has anything to do with that... Was it Arizona episode? Yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that episode where I was talking about the abandoned mine shafts or whatever? Disappointed viewers urged Veach to try again. He set out once more, never to return. His phone was eventually found outside the very mine, or the mine shaft, that was recorded in his previous video. A woman claiming to be his girlfriend later commented on the video, stating that her belief was that Veach had committed suicide and left his phone behind, as so not to be tracked.
I don't know, that seems sus.
Yeah. The next one is Trevor Deely. 22-year-old IT worker Trevor Deely was attending a work Christmas party on December 7th of 2000 at a nightclub in Dublin. I want to know, I've never had a job where they're like, let's go to a nightclub.
Right.
Maybe that means something different there.
No, I think it's the same.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's in Dublin, so, like, their primary goal. Yeah, they'd be partying.
Dealey left the club at 3:25 a.m., and then he stopped at work, where he briefly spoke to a mysterious man in black outside the business gates. At 4:14, after leaving work, so this was, like, less than an hour, Dealey was spotted walking home on CCTV footage with a man in black following roughly 30 seconds behind. This gives me, like, the man with the hat with the glowing red eyes, the shadow man or whatever that kids will say that they see growing up, like when they're in bed or whatever, they see him in the corner or in the doorways.
You're talking about the hat man?
Yes. I don't know why it wasn't clicking with me. Police believe that this is the same man who had already spoken to Dealey when he was at his office or at work. Unfortunately, this was the last known recording of Dealey, and the case has since gone cold. The man remains unidentified, and no one knows what was discussed or why Dealey was seemingly followed. The next one is Brian Schaefer. Schaefer was a medical student at Ohio State in 2006. Schaefer and his friend William Florence went bar hopping on the night of March 31st to celebrate spring break. Sometime during that night, Schaefer disappeared. Police reviewed CCTV footage outside of the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which I find, that's like...
If I open a bar, that's what I'm going to name it.
Right. Ugly Tuna Saloon. Where was this? In Ohio State. So if I ever go to Ohio and I'm somewhere around Ohio State, we're going to the Ugly Tuna Saloon. But anyway, police reviewed CCTV footage outside of the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which showed Schaefer talking with two women. He left them and walked toward the bar, but was never recorded leaving. This was the only known publicly accessible entrance and exit, leaving investigators puzzled. It's possible that the constantly panning and manually operated cameras just missed him. William Florence has refused to take a lie detector test, leading people close to Schaefer to suspect his involvement. Some believe that Schaefer is dead, while others think he ran off to live under a new identity.
Shit.
Alright.
You ready for my next one?
Yep.
It's got some twists and turns.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready.
The Yuba County Five. Ranging in ages from 24 to 32 and fondly referred to as the boys of Yuba County by friends and family, were Ted Weir, Gary Mathias, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, and Jackie Hewitt. Each of the young men had minor developmental disabilities, and some had psychiatric conditions, and all of them lived at home with their families. The boys loved sports and would play basketball together at the Yuba City Vocational Rehabilitation Center, and all five boys were to represent their community at the Special Olympics in Sacramento on Saturday, February 25th, 1978, with the prize being a week-long vacation in Los Angeles. On the Friday before the competition, each of the boys laid out their uniforms, and Ted asked his mother to wash his new high-top sneakers. Gary reminded his mother to not let him oversleep the next morning. Bill and Jack, as well as Jackie, were also looking forward to the tournament. That Friday night, they all climbed into Madruga's Mercury Montego, and they drove 46 hours north to attend... I don't know if that's right. 46 hours is a lot.
Hours. That's a week.
It could have been 4 to 6 hours, and I just... I'm going to say it was 4. It was about 4 hours. North to attend a basketball game at the California State University at Chico. After the game, they stopped at a market about 3 blocks from where the game was and stocked up on candy bars and snacks for the ride home. Witnesses saw them drive away in the Mercury heading south toward Yuba City. It should have been an easy drive home, a straight shot down Route 70. Ted's mother, Imogen, woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning with unexplainable feelings of anxiety and fear. She went in to check on Ted and found that his bed was empty and had not been slept in. Imogen then called Bill's mother, Juanita, who had been awake since 2 a.m. Bill had not come home either. In fact, none of the boys made it home that night, and all but Matthias had never stayed out all night before. The terrified families called the police. On Monday, February 27th, a U.S. Forest Service ranger reported a car abandoned in a snowbank on a mountain road in Plumas National Forest, 70 miles away from Yuba City. The ranger informed investigators that the first time he noticed the vehicle was 2 days prior, but had assumed it belonged to a skier. The seats of the Mercury were littered with wrappers of the candy and snacks the boy had purchased in Chico. The keys were missing, the tank was a quarter full, and the engine started immediately when police hotwired the car. There were no indications that anyone had attempted to push the car out of the snowbank, but the 5 men could have easily done so. They had traveled 50 miles in the wrong direction and eventually drove the Mercury up a rough mountain road and into a remote forest that was blanketed by 10 inches of snow. The boys had not been dressed in proper winter gear and were definitely not dressed for the snowy mountains, and there was really no reason for them to have been on that road in the first place. A search was organized by police. However, a blizzard brought another 9 inches of snow the very next day, which dampened their efforts. Search teams on snowmobiles struggled to get through the drifts and the dense forest, and 2 members had to be rescued themselves. There was no trace of the 5 men, and after 5 days, the search in the Plumas National Forest was abandoned. That same day, a man came forward with a strange story. He said that he had seen the boys and their car on the mountain road the night they vanished. Joseph Schnones, I don't know, I'm going to say Scones because that's what it looks like, of Sacramento told police that he had been driving up the road to check on his cabin near Bucks Lane when his Volkswagen Beetle got stuck in a snowbank. He unfortunately suffered a heart attack while trying to push it free and had to lay down in his car for hours in what he described as paralyzing pain. His doctors later confirmed that he did experience a heart attack. Around 11:30 p.m., he stated that headlights appeared on the road behind him. He said he pulled himself from the car and saw several men standing together in the glare of the headlights, along with what he thought was a woman holding a baby. He called to them for help, but the group immediately stopped talking and the headlights went out. Scones then returned to his Volkswagen and laid back down, where he stayed for another 2 hours until flashlight beams appeared outside his window. He once again yelled for help, but the flashlights went out and no one responded. In the pre-dawn hours of Saturday, February 25th, Scones felt as though he had recovered enough to be able to walk down the mountain to a lodge where he could get help. On his way down, he passed the site of the abandoned Mercury Montego, where hours earlier he heard the voices and saw lights, but the car was now silent, dark, and empty. There was no new information in the case for months, and no sign of the missing men, who had become collectively known as the Yuba County Five, and their disappearance fueled rumors ranging from carjacking to false imprisonment by local hippies.
It's always the hippies. Why are we
well,
the hippies?
The Manson family murders were still at the forefront of people's minds then. There were many reported sightings, but all of those reports ended up being dead ends. The families of the men offered a reward for information, and a few even turned to psychics. One of the parents spoke with the media and said, "We definitely feel something has happened, but we also feel they are alive." On Sunday, June 4th, 1978, some motorcyclists in the Plumas National Forest came upon a deserted Forest Service trailer deep in the woods, at the end of a gravel road near where the Mercury had been abandoned. Curious, the motorcyclists went inside and encountered a truly ghastly sight. It was the emaciated, decaying body of Ted Weir, stretched out on a bed, wrapped in multiple sheets. The once tall, husky man with a friendly smile had wasted away to 100 pounds. Neatly placed on the table beside him was his ring, which was engraved with Ted, his gold necklace, his wallet still containing cash, and a gold watch that the family said did not belong to any of the boys. Ted's beard growth indicated that he had lived inside the trailer for approximately 8 to 13 weeks before finally succumbing to starvation and hypothermia. His shoes were also missing, and his feet were severely frostbitten. Investigators determined that Ted had walked through nearly 20 miles of snow to reach the trailer and broke in through a window. He had opened and emptied several sea ration cans that were stored in an outside shed, but it was what Ted hadn't done that really puzzled investigators. There was a locker in the shed that contained dehydrated meals, fruit cocktails, and enough food to keep all 5 men alive for a year, but it went untouched. There were also matches and fuel and a propane tank in another shed, but he had not attempted to build a fire or even turn the gas on for cooking or for heat. There was no indication that he had attempted to leave the trailer, even though the snow may have melted enough for him to do so. The following day, approximately halfway between the car and the trailer, searchers found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. Animals had ravaged the bodies. The father of Jackie Hewitt had joined the search party and located his son's backbone and shoes 2 miles from the trailer. Hewitt's skull was recovered the following day, 100 yards away. It wasn't clear if the men had died before reaching the trailer or if they had broken in with Ted. A quarter mile from the trailer, searchers found 3 Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight, which suggested to investigators a breakout attempt. Shoes belonging to the 5th man, Gary Mathias, were found inside the trailer, but there were no other signs of him. Investigators speculated that Mathias may have taken Weir's leather shoes, which were larger and more suitable for the cold, snowy conditions, and he was the only one of the boys whose body was never found. It is quite apparent that something happened between the time the boys left Chico on the night of February 24th, 1978, and the following day when the Mercury was sighted in the Plumas National Forest. Whatever happened likely occurred before or around the time they passed through the town of Oroville on Route 70, where instead of driving south toward Yuba City, they struck out for the mountains. But the question remains, why? Did they just mean to take a brief side trip and got lost? Were they trying to assist another motorist who was in distress? Were they carjacked? There are a lot of unanswered questions. Let's see. I wrote out a lot of questions, but I'm not going to read all of those. It has been 45 years since Ted, Gary, Bill, Jack, and Jackie left home on a winter night to go to a basketball game, only for them to pass into legend, with the story continuing to inspire horror and speculation. The number of victims, the bizarre sightings, the bewildering clues, and the vast area where the events occurred make this case one of America's most disturbing and perplexing cold cases.
That one had some twists and turns.
I told you.
Wow. All right. The last 2 I have. Henry McCabe. On the morning of September 7th. Oh, girl, you good? Amara just decided to join the party.
I'm going to say hi. You want to say hi? She says no.
No, thank you. On the morning of September 7th of 2015, Corrine McCabe received a horrifying voicemail from her husband Henry. It features what sounds like menacing growls and human moaning before a voice is heard saying, "Stop it." Henry McCabe was quickly declared a missing person. The last person to see him alive told investigators that he dropped him off at a convenience store following a night of partying. McCabe remained missing for over 2 months until his body was found in a lake roughly 6 miles from the convenience store. The weird thing is that medical examiners found no apparent injuries on McCabe's body, leading many to question the source and reasoning for the eerie sounds captured on the voicemail. Skinwalker.
Probably.
And the last one, Chris, I'm going to say Kremers, Kremers, and Lisanne Froon. These two young Dutch students set off on a hike in Panama on April 1st, 2014. With them was a dog that belonged to restaurant owners they'd befriended, but the dog returned alone. 10 weeks later, Froon's backpack was discovered by a riverbank with her camera and both women's phones. Both had tried to call emergency services on the first day of the hike. A few days later, Froon's phone died, and someone entered false PIN codes into Kremer's phone. More attempts to call emergency services followed. The digital camera contained photos of their hike, but also 90 flash photos, like 90 flash photos from the pitch black morning of April 8th, one showing the back of Kremer's head. Sadly, the women's bones were later found scattered along the riverbank. It remains a tragic and baffling mystery to this day.
Shit.
Shite.
Alright, so my last one. This is a bit shorter, but easier to digest. And for all of you who like to hear me try to pronounce French names, this one's for you. We have Louis Le Prince. Regarded as the father of cinematography, Louis Le Prince mysteriously disappeared in 1890, and what happened to him remains unknown. Born in Metz, France in 1841, it's probably Louis. I bet it's Louis. Had the fortune during his youth to regularly visit a studio that belonged to a friend of his father, the inventor of photography, Jacques I knew once upon a time I knew how to say this because I learned it in history of it's Daguerre.
Hold on, let me look at it.
Once upon a time I knew, but
bear with me 2 seconds. Let me
after I took history of photography, I didn't retain any of it.
Where are your notes, bro?
My notes?
Yeah.
They're in the email. I seen them. Yeah. Here, look, I'll put this in Teams.
It just shows me pictures.
I sent it to you in Teams.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I said, once upon a time, I knew how to say that. I don't know how to say that anymore. But anyway, the guy who invented photography, like as we know it, I guess. After studying chemistry and physics at university, Le Prince moved to England at the invitation of John Whitley, prior to establishing the Leeds Technical School of Art, where he specialized in tinting and firing of photographic images. During the 1880s, Le Prince became fascinated with the early cinematic technologies that were being developed during that time. In 1886, he created a 16-lens camera and applied for an American patent on November 2nd of that same year. The patent was granted at the beginning of 1888, and on November 16th, 1888, he received a British patent for his invention. The Le Prince single-lens cinecamera is believed to be the equipment used to film the famous Roundhay Garden and Leeds Bridge scenes, and it has proven to be one of the most groundbreaking inventions of early cinema. By today's standard, the contraption appears to be quite primitive with its paper-backed stripping film, but the evidence is there that the equipment was successful in projecting moving images, which means that Louis Le Prince's movies predate those of Edison and the Lumieres by over half a decade. Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers dominated the headlines for inventing the equipment that made the moving image possible. But Louis Le Prince preceded them by a number of years with a working model which captured motion outside his home in Roundhay, Leeds. Which, to be perfectly honest, that's not the first time that Edison would have stolen anything from anybody, because he did not invent the light bulb first. He might have improved it, but he didn't invent it. Anyway. But his achievements, were not widely recognized shortly before a scheduled public performance of his technology, Le Prince went missing with no clues as to what happened to him. On September 16th, 1890, he disappeared, never to be seen again. Le Prince promised that he would rejoin his friends in Paris for a return journey to England, but he failed to arrive at the appointed time, and nobody, his friends or family, ever saw him again. The last ever sighting of him was on board a train leaving the Dijon platform. Both the French police and Scotland Yard carried out an exhaustive search for his body and luggage, but neither was ever found, and the case remains unsolved. There have been many theories ranging from suicide to murder by rival cinematographers, which may not be too unrealistic, but the one undisputed fact is that Le Prince was the first past the post with his pioneering work in the medium, which would ultimately become film. So, the first guy that ever made a movie at all disappeared.
Nice.
And I'm not saying Edison had anything to do with it, but I think Edison had something to do with it.
I'm not saying, but I'm saying.
Right. So, I have the nonprofit of the week. And I have chosen the Night Owl Reconnaissance. So Night Owl Reconnaissance is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is dedicated to using detection and investigation techniques to find missing persons and provide survivor services to those who have been missing and are now recovered. Our team of professionals consists of dedicated volunteers who are passionate about our mission. And our mission is to reunite missing persons with their families and provide support to those who have been recovered. We strive to make a difference in the lives of those affected by the trauma of being missing and help them return to a normal life. At Night Owl Reconnaissance, we believe that every missing person deserves to be acknowledged and that every survivor deserves support. And you can donate directly to the link in the description of this episode or via the Facebook post I might forget to make.
Well, I've been lacking hard.
Oh, me too. I've been trying, but I feel like I'm doing a little bit better than I was.
Our goal for the next year
is to get better. Yeah.
Oh.
So, how we feeling? That was a good episode.
It was. It was a real good episode.
It was over an hour.
Dang.
An hour and 13 minutes now.
That was all you, friend. I was stoked
that
about...
Martin family was long.
Right. I was stoked about my Jimmy Hoffa.
Honestly, I hadn't even thought of him.
See, what's funny, though, is I wrote that episode, and then it was like the next day or a couple days later, a friend of mine that works in the trucking industry had texted me and said that they had a mandatory meeting, that just all of a sudden the legal team set up, and they were talking to them about how to keep their drivers from unionizing. And I was like, that's weird.
Right.
That's suspicious. Because I literally just got through writing a whole thing about Jimmy Hoffa, bro.
Yeah. Unions are quite controversial. I didn't realize how, controversial it can be.
It's very... It's... Because, I'm telling you, it's those unions protect their members.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. But it's very hard on the companies that these unions work for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. But yeah, it's even I've heard about in nursing there are unions. Mm-hmm. But a lot of nurses will... and correct me if I'm wrong if anybody's listening to this and you're a nurse and you've heard about nursing unions, but nurses who are not part of the nursing union will kind of alienate anybody who has decided to join a union in nursing. I don't know. It's a whole weird thing. But I don't know. I just hope that the SAG-AFTRA strike thing with all the actors, they figure something out.
That's been going on for forever.
A while. The writers' strike is over. That one's done. Now they've got writers to write things, but they don't have actors in anything. So what the issue is AI. Because they're using AI to put these people's faces into stuff, and they're not getting paid for their likeness being used.
Yeah.
And we think of Angelina Jolie's or whatever, but then there's and they're fine if they're not working. Right. But then there's the people who get bit parts and stuff, or have just guest starring roles, and they haven't broken big into the business like a Tom Cruise or whatever, and they're right now struggling to keep their lights on or pay their rent.
Right.
So, anyways,
well, this week, share us out. Tell your local schools resource officer, your local SRO.
There we go.
So, send your kid to school tomorrow, because you guys listen to this on Wonders Wednesday.
And just say, my mom said, or my dad said.
You need to listen to this podcast, but make sure the kid reiterates that they don't listen to this podcast. Yeah. Because if you're letting your kid... like it,
but I'm not allowed to listen to it.
If your kid is listening to this...
Get some help.
We say that, but I don't know. It just depends on your level of comfortable. Well, right. And it depends on what episode it is that they're listening to or whatever. There's some stuff on here that I wouldn't let my kids listen to. But there's some stuff on here that I'm if Maddie listens, Maddie listens. But, so, anyway, share us out.
What do you look so mad for?
She does look angry.
She bit me earlier.
Share us out. Find us and follow us on TikTok,
Instagram,
X,
Facebook.
Email us at wandersofweird@gmail.com.
Oh yeah. I heard a little kid not too long ago go, oh yeah, and I was
it at my house the other night?
It might have been. I don't remember. But I was
boys are relentless.
I was that is so weird. Why are y'all doing that?
Easton, we're at soccer today, and Easton did it, and then one of the other kids, his little buddy, was they were, several feet apart, but Easton's down here, or it might have been last night at practice, but Easton's down here, and he goes, huh, and then this one over here, huh, and I'm like,
when does it end?
I fuss at Easton for doing it because I'm that's gross. You don't do that.
I'm sorry if you just heard me burp. Just know that it really stinks.
TJ, on the other hand, thinks it's hilarious.
I mean, it is kind of hilarious. It is literally hilarious.
It's weird.
It's hilarious when little kids do adult things.
Yeah.
When we went to watch the Taylor Swift movie, so they're singing, along to the songs, and now that she's older, she cusses in her songs. Mm-hmm. So there was a song. And it's got goddamn in it. And hearing, a whole chorus of, children under the age of 10 scream out goddamn was absolutely just the best thing I could have seen that whole day.
Well, TJ and Easton were wrestling a while back. And TJ, I don't know, he did something to Easton, stone cold stunnered him on the bed or something like that. And Easton goes, oh, Daddy! And I was like,
please, never do that again.
No.
Never. Oh. Way to make it weird, dude.
Right. He is so weird. He's and it's just, I was not prepared. So, all three of my children were planned.
Yeah.
And I had the two girls. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, let's try this one more time for that boy.
Yeah.
I wanted...
Aren't you glad you did that?
I wanted a boy.
Like,
I thought I was prepared for a boy, but
No.
I was not.
I don't think anybody ever is. And like people we went to high school with that exclusively have like 4 boys. I'm like, how do you do it?
I
That seems
can't.
awful, and it seems stinky.
Oh.
Wait till they're all teenagers. It's gonna be stinky.
It's like I was not. I
I'm
was
so
not.
glad my
I'm
neighbors-
not meant to be a boy mom.
Well, too bad you're in
I
it.
know. I'm not meant to be a boy. Like, he was going to get in the shower the other day and, like, runs in the bathroom, strips off all his clothes, the door's standing wide open. Gemma goes to walk through, and he goes, "Don't look at my penis!" And I'm like, what? Stop! Just close the door.
Boys are so weird.
And then he had like a little like toy dog figurine that he got at school yesterday, and he was like, everybody was saying it was a girl, but look at it, Mom. And he holds it up with its like underside in my face.
Got a wiener?
He goes, "It's got a wiener." I was like, yes, it does appear that it has something in that general vicinity. Jesus. In 2 ways. All right. Well.
We will see you next week for another hard-hitting episode.
Oh, this is the episode.
Yeah, this is the episode. We'll have to flip a coin to see who goes first.
Get ready. Strap in, guys. Strap in.
Yeah.
All right. Share
All right.
us out. Let us know all the things, you know. You know the
Yeah.
drill. Be a good human.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.